Hi, everybody. We're going to talk now. We're going to go into a topic that is probably not one of your all-time faves, but we're going to be looking at searching for statistics and polling data. Even though data is not becoming a data journalist is not something that each of you will want to do, it doesn't make any difference what kind of reporting you're doing. You will be called upon to include data many times in your stories. One of the things that we have here that is a former editor at the LA Times put together, which is very helpful to get a slight refresher on data, is this link, Statistics Every Writer Should Know. And Robert Niles has put together short guides on basic statistical concepts. And the ones we're going to take a look at today are just the first few. I'm sure all of you know the difference between mean, median, and mode. Mean is the average. Median is the middle point of an organized set of numbers. And mode is what you would consider typical. What's the most frequent instance of a number? The two where you might get into trouble, a couple of places where you might get into trouble. One is percents. Percent changes are one of the things that reporters sometimes have to calculate themselves. So it's important to know, how do you calculate a percentage change? How much did a budget go up? How much did tuition go up? How much did the murder rate change? And so one of the things that is very simple way to remember this is you take the new value, so let's say tuition goes from $1,000 to $2,000, and you take the new value, which is $2,000, you subtract the old value, and then you divide by the old value. So in this case, in the case we just talked about, if tuition went from $1,000 to $2,000, that's $1,000 difference. You divide that by the old number, and that means it's gone up 100%. That's not often going to be the case where the number is going to go up 100%. Another thing that you have to be very aware of in your reporting is per capita and rates. So if I want to compare the number of murders in Orange County to the number of murders in Los Angeles County, and I found that there were 50 murders in the last 6 months in Orange County and 50 murders in the same period of time in Los Angeles County, which county would you say has the greater problem with murder? Well, it would be Orange County, because there are so many fewer people in Orange County. So whenever you're comparing communities of two different sizes, you have to be able to look at the per capita rate. So how many murders per 100,000 people, or how many murders per million people? And so that's very important to recognize. Often these per capita rates will be provided for you, but as the COVID pandemic coverage amply shows you, at the very beginning of this, there were no per capita rates. They were just giving you raw numbers, and it was very confusing and very imprecise on where the problems were the greatest. There were many statistical issues that came along with the COVID statistics, but that was one of them, per capita. The second thing is rates, and so how does the rate change? So if I were to tell you that there were 500 African American students at Cal State Long Beach in 1999, and in 2009 there were 600 African American students, you might say that the number had gone up. Well, but the population of the students also went up, and so the percentage of African American students actually did not go up. So those are just things you have to be very aware of when you are reporting, and when it comes to statistics. Now, there are other things that you have to be careful of, but those are the main ones. So now we're going to spend a couple of minutes looking at two sources of data that could be useful to you when you're reporting. The first one is the U.S. Census. The U.S. Census is the basic U.S. Census information is information that you have to know how to gather from the time you're an intern. You don't want to be even in an internship situation where you don't know how to find basic demographic information about a community. And here on the census website, the place that you can go, and the census has more data than probably any other source in the United States. But here is where you go just for the quick facts on the demographics of a community. And it's a fairly straightforward website. You go up here, and you type in the name of your state, city, county, or town, or the zip code. In this case, we're going to put in California. And we want the whole state. And then we're going to put in Arizona. And now you can see we're going to have the U.S. demographics, the California demographics, and the Arizona demographics. You could do that with 2 cities in a state. You could do it in 2 counties in a state. It all works the same way. Now we're just getting ready. Well, we've started the 2020 census, but it's obviously delayed because of, the pandemic. So many of these pieces of data here are going to have little warnings on them that say that they're not comparable to others because it's been a long time since the census data was gathered individually. After each 10 years, and the data is counted meticulously every 10 years, then in between the 10-year census, there are community surveys which fill in the gaps so that we get a sense of how things are changing between the 2 census. Community surveys then require statistical analysis and statistical projections. So some of the numbers are not going to be, when you get down to small categories, are not going to be comparable. However, for most reporting circumstances, if the census has a number, you can say it and attribute it to the census. So for instance, here, if you look down here, you can see that in the difference between California and Arizona in terms of households with a computer, in Arizona, 89.9% of households have a computer. 91.7% of California households have a computer. And both of those are over and above the United States average, which is 88.8. Then we also have households with broadband internet subscription. We have 81% in Arizona, 84% in California. So you can see that the digital divide is still there. There's still in California 15 to 16% of households do not have broadband connection. There are many statistics that you can get here. Wealth, poverty, health insurance, home ownership, basic ethnicity, age, sex. It's a very, very useful tool and very simple to use. The next thing we're going to look at is a database that Cal State Long Beach has called iPoll. And what iPoll allows you to do is to gather poll questions, is to find poll questions from various pollsters and to look at the differences in the results based upon the way the question is worded and the time frame that's involved. So let's say I wanted to look at health insurance. So now it's going to give me the questions that have been asked on health insurance. And I can filter it by decade. So let's say I want the 2020s. I only want questions that have been asked in 2020. Do you think it would be legal or illegal for health insurance companies to refuse to pay for health care services for people who are transgender? Are you yourself now covered by any form of health insurance? Which is the main source of your health insurance? Compared to white Americans, do you think black Americans are more or less likely? And so you can see what all the various questions are. And then once you click on the question, it's then going to give you the answers to that particular question. So, how much have you read or heard about the Trump administration rule on removing non-discrimination protections for lesbian, gay, and bisexual? So 14% had read a lot, 25% had read some, 25% had read only a little, 35% had read nothing at all. And it tells you when the survey was conducted, the sample size, and how it was conducted. So this gives you a sense, and this is very useful information for when you're reporting and when you're trying to get an understanding of public opinion on a topic.